Hey folks, I'm Dustin Siggins and with Proven Media Solutions. And today we're going to talk about why PR needs marketing and why marketing needs PR. And it's really all part of an integrated, cohesive communication strategy, whether you're in commodities, whether you're in specialized industries or complex sales. Everyone, could you just introduce yourselves, maybe starting with Andrew, Wendy, and then Jennifer?
Sure. Great to be here. Andrew Moyer. I'm the general manager and EVP at Reputation Partners. We're a strategic communications and PR partner based out of the Chicago market, serving
Great.
clients coast to coast.
Wendy Serafin. I am a fractional communication consultant and advisor for my own firm. But prior, I was in-house and built up communication functions at fintechs, startups, and corporations. So,
Hi, everybody. I'm Jen George. I'm SVP of Communications at the Aspen Group, which is a healthcare portfolio company. And I'm so excited to be here with all of you because I firmly believe there is no better time to be in the communications space. So I'm really excited to talk more about it.
Now, Jennifer, let's go to that real quick because that's an interesting sidebar. Why do you think it's no better time? Because a lot of people are thinking the opposite because of like finding a job and AI and other things.
Look, whether you're a brand, whether you're a founder, you're a large, global company, what people feel about you drives what they buy. It drives who they work for, who they believe, and trust is not built through ads. It is built through consistent, human, transparent communications. And so with the world in the state of chaos that it is, I firmly believe there is no one better positioned to do that important work through ambiguity and geopolitical challenges and macroeconomic challenges than communications professionals. I mean, we are masters of chaos.
Yeah, that's a great line. I may have to borrow that
yeah,
one.
I may too.
It's being recorded,
I brought my
Andrew.
special cup
Oh, there
for
it
this
is. I
conversation.
love it. We're gonna have to get a couple of those.
A friend of
That's
mine,
true.
Sam Reel, her company's tagline is "Scale without chaos."
Oh, I love
You know,
that.
how to grow without actually creating the chaos that ensues with it.
Yeah.
Which is why we've hired her as a consultant from time to time because we're trying to grow and I have no idea how to do it on my own.
Yeah.
So she's been very
Yeah,
helpful.
I could not agree more with that sort of description of why now. I mean, think of all those challenges said and sort of unsaid in what you were saying. What is the common denominator there that people are looking for a place, a brand, an organization they trust? How is that developed? That's through consistent communications, consistent storytelling, consistent relationship building. That all comes down to communications.
Well, and also you sort of hit this. Reputation is compounding now.
Right.
So every memo, every tweet, or what are they called on
And that
X's? Every customer email, it's getting scraped, it's getting summarized, it is getting stored and fed by AI,
Right.
and so comms is truly the heartbeat of how people understand who you are and what you stand for today.
Right. And you just have that clear eye across. I mean, as you say, the chaos, but also like we see around corners, we see two steps ahead. We're like, what could go wrong? Like, there's just the anticipation of all these things that keep going around in our world. And comms folks just have a very interesting perspective that they should always be brought at the table and they always bring. And it may not be something you like to hear, but it definitely something needs to be elevated.
But a lot of comms people, in my opinion, and I've only been active in comms world on LinkedIn for a bit over a year. One of the things I often see, Wendy, is people saying we drive more value than people realize. We should be at the table. Why are comms people unable to, in many cases, able to show that value and able to prove it? And some of it, I think, is always going to be the business leader is usually not that wise about communications, doesn't know how to grow with it or utilize it effectively. They think it's a budget cost versus an investment. But I think a lot of communications people speak lingo. They speak open
Mhm.
rates instead of driving, penetrating the target audience with data attached to that. So,
Right.
how can we make ourselves both more credible, but also then able to prove that value?
Right, right. No, and I think there was a comment in I think one of the posts about, in terms of self, not self promotion, but almost marketing yourself internally
Mhm.
and packaging it up. And I think the challenge is that comms it's a long game. It's
Yep.
we talk about PR and it's a long game. It's not a one-to-one. Like if you do this thing, this press release or this article, you're going to get these 10 leads. Marketing is that's what they do and that's what they should do. But then how do we kind of package it up in a way and say, oh, by the way, not by the way, but oh, we as in terms of like awareness building and top funnel, getting you in the door, getting the sales folks in the door. Yeah, I heard, I saw you in that Forbes article, or I saw you, the op-ed that your executive penned. Those are the qualitative aspects that are hard to measure, but they are very valuable when you kind of tally them up or package them up in such a way that you can kind of talk about like, this is the goal we're trying to do, this is what we're trying to solve, this is the brand, the reputation we're trying to build, and these are the things that are helping support that. And oh, by the way, and then we can turn the conversation to marketing and PR, and that marketing, and now you can use this content to expand into more of an earned, owned, paid a strategy that then becomes more marketing, and that can help support marketing strategies. So not to pivot to a different topic, but you
Well,
teed it up.
that's what we're supposed to talk about anyway. So I allow Jennifer to take us in a different
No,
direction.
I loved it. I love that too.
But now that we're back on track, right? When the reason we started talking about this topic is I kept seeing a lot of marketing people go viral for their repurposed content posts on LinkedIn, and they hardly ever mention PR. But then a lot of PR firms, and a lot of PR firms are heading in the direction of integrating marketing, especially for LLMs and components. My firm almost exclusively offers earned media, but we always try to make sure we're integrated with our clients' marketing teams to make sure that earned media isn't just hanging out in the ether; it's being used properly and repurposed to drive more value. But a lot of PR people do seem to think, oh, we've done our job. It's in the press. Whatever they do with it, that other side of the table does with it is up to them. And so to your point, Wendy, one of the things we discussed in our prep call, I think Andrew, you brought it up first, was how to make sure that we're working together so that we are integrated appropriately. So we're all using the same content calendar and strategy. So, Andrew, when as an agency guy, how do you all make sure that you're working with the marketing team in an integrated fashion so there's not this siloing and this butting of heads of egos and positioning?
Well, I think an important thing is to not forget you just have to ask as a first step. If you're not asking to get exposure, if you're brought in through comms or through PR specifically for our agency, don't forget to ask what's happening on the marketing side. Can we find a way to integrate those calendars? And it's not to say that everything's going to be done at the same time in the same way. There are going to be unique marketing campaigns that have to take place. Are you driving people to sign up for something? You're driving people to purchase something around Prime Day. That's not necessarily going to drive a specific comms calendar, but you have to at least be aware of it and planning for either what could that lead to that you might want to support with communications, or are you having separate communications going out that aren't just totally distracting from that marketing campaign? It's coordination. It's not necessarily complete overlap. You want that alignment, you want that partnership, you want the coordination. That's the key word here, right? Because there's a shared purpose for both marketing and PR. We just come at it from different angles. We're both trying to build brand value. We're trying to develop that trust, that reputation. There may be different ways that we get to that, and there are certainly different expertises that we bring. But again, it's that partnership that allows that to happen and ensures there's a clear, consistent narrative and story being told, no matter where someone is consuming that content.
I also think in the absence of clear or maybe sexy KPIs in the comms space, we often or comms teams can often default to focusing on outputs instead of outcomes. So we focus on the pitch or how many, the placements or the calendar instead of things like traffic or trust. How does one actually, put numbers in that, pipeline, right? And so I think if we can start to, as a cohort, think about the customer journey and think about the business problem we are trying to solve, not the PR problem we're trying to solve. That's
right.
shift
That's
us
the key.
from the PR person to being an indispensable advisor to the business.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more with that.
One of the things I've been talking about here on the show, but also in some of my writing, is the need to speak C-suite. Because
Mhm.
if we're not, we're saying, again, open rates, or as you said, well, we pitched all these outlets. Well, great. How many did you get? Like, in our case, we don't tell the client how many times we pitched. We have a campaign. There's a big youth gathering happening this weekend. 18,000 kids are going to be there. Client doesn't need to know how many people we pitched or whatever. What they know is they, between op-eds, interviews in certain states, and a few national outlets in their niche, they're going to get several dozen pieces of coverage, including republishings and downstream attention, that they wouldn't have otherwise had. That's the outcome that they were looking for, was greater exposure. And then in trying to integrate, we've met with their marketing team. We've made sure we meet with their national team as well as their state teams to make sure that they are using social, reaching out to allies and doing those other things, because otherwise it's just hanging out in the ether. And
Right.
it started with us asking, what is your goal?
Right.
And being able to speak that language all the way through the campaign.
Right.
Yeah, tying it back to
And from
goal is important.
Yeah. And also too, like what the other kind of term I always use, just that it helps folks, is you get this great placement or you get this great podcast or what have you, but extending the shelf life of the
Ooh, yeah.
earned media is really what
Mhm.
marketing and content can do. So when I say it that way, it clicks in terms of like, yes, how can we get more mileage out of this? Not just the 12, well, I don't even know what the news cycle is, 2 hours now. I mean,
8
it's
minutes.
like 8 minutes, I don't know. So can you extend that with earned, owned content, a blog post, more social content? So extending the shelf life always seems to be a term that resonates with folks like in marketing and beyond. So
I also use I use this data point a lot. I'm gonna get it directionally right, but probably specifically right now. But it's
Sure.
something like up to a third of a company's market value is attributable to reputation. And so in that capacity, it's not a feeling, it's not, it is a measurable asset. And so can you start to think about, and it's not going to be perfect, but how can we as comms professionals build dashboards to help prove out some of that? And so one of the things we've done at Aspen, for example, is we've built out a reputation index, and it's a composite metric. It's tracking and weighting the signals that we think are shaping perception and behavior. So like Reddit sentiment is one piece in there. Employer brand ratings is another element of it. So again, it's not perfect, but it starts to get you
right.
at least at the table, you can start to get ahead of issues, but B, you can actually start to align your comm strategy with business risk and opportunity, and that's really what gets your C-suite executives to their
Absolutely.
That's also though where you can really have a hard metric that's not just a vanity metric, that you can absolutely can and should talk about comms impacting. So if you have a sentiment score that goes from 75% positive to 78% positive, that increase is a metric that directly ties then into business value, trust, to growth, whatever it is, that again tied back to a business goal. But that is one where the harder to define broad awareness building that comms tends to build into gives you the metric that gives you the justification, the ROI, the reason to a seat at the table.
It's a great point.
Very good point.
So
Absolutely.
so Wendy, and Jennifer, both in-house people, right? How do you as the leader of the in-house comms team make sure that people are focused, sort of, the cats are being herded? Because the PR person may think they're being superseded, much like, what is it, the accountants, the financial people think they deserve more credit than the salespeople, but the salespeople say, oh, they're bringing in the money. Do you find that sort of conflict in-house between different parts of the communications team? And then how do you make sure that everyone feels like they're all part of the game, so to speak, and they're all, equal teammates?
Right. I'll let Jen go first on that one.
It's funny. I had a boss a couple of years ago. I was at Shutterfly at the time, and we were talking about hiring like a head of strategy. And she was like, "No, we all own strategy." And I sort of feel
Strategy
the same way about reputation. Like
and
reputation,
comms,
everyone's
absolutely.
job, you know, but no one
Exactly.
does their job first, and that's where the breakdown can happen, right? It's everybody's
Mm.
job, but it's not my job first. And so,
Mhm.
I think, it's how you can address it, because like anyone who says that there is none of that in-house is either new to comms or lying.
Right.
So is there a way in which you can create, well, number one, aligning on a single source of truth, which is why a dashboard matters, because it gets everybody out of the feeling space and into facts, or at least data
Mhm.
points. And then
Right.
you stop arguing over who's right, and you start thinking about what's true and then what's working, to Andrew's point. Like, how can you start to see some velocity shift? Um,
Mhm.
and then I think making it safe to flag issues early is what really helps remove some of that friction. If comms teams or even like ops teams or finance, if they're too scared to surface risk because legal might shut it down or somebody's going to panic, you've already lost. And so you need to have a shared muscle for that, and to
Mm.
calm some of the decision making down. So yes, there
Right.
there is conflict, but I think with the right scaffolding and structure, you can start to turn that chaos into a coordinated reputation or comms engine in some way.
Right. Right. I agree. And for me, I've been in where you've lined up under, I've worked under a CMO, I've worked directly with the CEO, and I think the elevation of both groups at similar footing is
Yeah.
helpful. I think structure, unfortunately, really does impact, how well or maybe not well the coordination or the collaboration is, depending on aligning on goals and all the things. But I think, when you work with executives that really do value comms, that is obviously that's extremely full because they're going to be
Yes.
the first to say justify it. But the way I always look at it too is comms is like one of the only functions that looks across enterprise wide besides like the CEO. I mean, we are the ones that touch every single group department. So our viewpoint is very unique. And I use that in a way that's a point of strength because we see the collisions, you see like I said, round corners, this, social over here and opposite over here, and some you see it going down the road. So using that as a way to say, not that it's like I see everything, so I should be, I should be all the things, but it is just a unique perspective that not all functions have, and you want to use it as a strength as a way to help support. So, but I think structure is always tough. There's always been this debate on, does comms go under marketing, or should marketing go under
Right.
comms? That's crazy thought. But and it depending on how large the company is, it depends where it gets placed. And I think I said this before. Sometimes they pull together. Sometimes intercoms, internal goes to HR. I am a firm believer that it needs to be all together and centralized because internal external cannot
I
be separated at all.
could not agree more.
And brand, and what I'm seeing too with my roles is brand ended up rolling under me because in the end, brand, reputation, it all works together in the cohesive aspect. And then if you're partnering with the acquisition team or the growth team,
Mm.
now you're equal footing, and now you can have these equal conversations about like, I understand this campaign, but just so you know, this may land this way, or I'm seeing it this way. So I think the equal footing of however marketing and comms your structure is really important because otherwise there will always be this like strange dynamic going on. So
Dissonance between everybody. No, that makes
potentially,
sense.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think some of it is also just ensuring there's a common language that it can talk to
yeah,
each other about.
right,
We're actually saying the same thing. We're just coming at it from different angles, and often take
exactly,
that moment to understand how each of those disciplines, marketing and comms, make each other smarter.
Yeah.
Wendy, I don't know if it's exactly the point you were making, but comms comes in from that risk perspective. It's like
right,
the risks to this marketing campaign, let's just be ready for them. Marketing
right,
might come in and they have data that comms might not have access to. So let's say, we're talking about a business goal or business growth. All of a sudden you find out your NPS score is down as an organization. You're probably going to have better access through marketing to pinpointing maybe something that specifically has changed in a product, in a region, like where can you try to pinpoint something that's driving that dip in an NPS? And again, then comms comes in and we can come up with a really targeted strategy, a story, some sort of effort that responds to that specific gap that's identified through marketing data. So again, it's how do we
Right.
make each other smarter? How do we say that in a way where we're speaking the same language?
Absolutely.
Hey, Andrew, what does NPS mean?
Net promoter score. So basically, how do people feel about you? Or is it good, bad,
Okay.
or otherwise?
Got it. Okay. The non-in-house, non-big agency guy.
Just imagine it's strongly agree, neutral,
Yeah.
Okay.
disagree,
Yeah.
totally.
It's definitely a metric that a lot of even other department, product pays attention to, ops pays attention to.
It's in our scorecard. It's in our dashboard.
Yeah.
There you go. It's a great sort of unifying data point because there's so much that goes into it.
That makes sense, right?
There's so
You
many
have the
inputs
product
that drive
side,
people's score.
Mhm.
investors and everything else being seen, especially today. You mentioned, Jennifer, earlier, Reddit, social, you can just tile
Mhm.
it into it. That makes sense. I just never heard the acronym.
It's a good reminder. The usual comms training is no jargon, and I guess I'm not living up to my own guidance here. So
Well, to be fair, we're inside the communications world.
Yeah, you're among friends, Andrew.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're-
no worries.
yeah, it's just,
Don't judge.
as I said before, my only in-house role was me. So we didn't have such sophisticated tools. We had me scrambling all
you
the time.
didn't give yourself an NPS score. I guess that's okay.
No comment. I'll stick to a good PR answer and say no comment.
That's a bad PR answer, Dustin.
That's a bit. I was gonna say you have to pivot.
Well, it's
So
better
what
than
we
the
want
answer I
to
was
talk
gonna
about
give, I
here
assure you.
is
What I focus on, you got to pivot. You got to bridge and block and move.
Yeah,
Excuse,
exactly.
excuse me. Yes, the bosses I had were awful. It was all their fault.
Not sure
Again,
that would be
not a
under
good-
our council either.
Which would you prefer? No comment or that one?
No, neither. We'll
idea.
do some training.
We should do a live media training for Dustin.
That would be
Yeah,
fun.
exactly.
Really,
Last
this is
week I
good.
wore the wrong shirt. This week I'm saying the wrong thing. So this is great. Next week I'll actually have my light up. So I'll actually be back on track. All right, so let's jump into some of the sort of internal integration. Right? We've talked about the strategic sense, but what is some of that scaffolding that should be in place to make sure that everyone's working together on a tactical, day-to-day level? For us, again, as an agency, we make sure that we have regular calls with the marketing team. We had one client, they didn't even really have an SEO strategy, but we still were on the phone with that point person every 3 months just to make sure that what we were getting was tracking with their strategy. So how do you make sure that those sort of that beyond the content calendar, so that scaffolding of the content calendar, we have the big picture, make sure everyone's feeling valued and moving in the same direction, but what are the other parts of that foundation?
I mean, I think Jen's dashboard in terms of aligning that and sharing that. I do think, yeah, the big thing about comms leaders is making sure that you're connecting with all parts of the business all the time. And and it seems so tactical, but there's so many, you get so busy with what you're doing that you're not, you do just set up the time to just, even if you don't have an agenda item, it's like, I want to talk to product every month, or, engineering or legal or what have you. Just building rapport is really helpful. Because then when they need, you just open up that communication. So scaffolding is like just being a good relationship with said peers and executives alike. That helps with your proving your value too, because the more you're in front, the more you're talking, the more you're elevating, the more you're asking a lot of questions. So, I mean, I tend to want to listen more, ask questions versus is very helpful. And I think the other thing too that I've gone in when I've had to build up a comms communication or a function is I start with a key message map, because I do a listening tour with all the leaders and I tell me about the company. How would you describe it? The classic question, right? Tell me how would you describe it at a cocktail party? How do you tell your mom what this company does? And you may get 8 different answers, you may not, but it starts to you start to see kind of synergies and consistencies, but then also not. Are we a platform, or are we a website? Are we this? Are we that? And then you can start to kind of build that out with the narrative building. So the scaffolding, like the wording you use, the terminology you use, how you describe the company, and then be like, all right, we have a lot of work to do. We're close, but it's a map that then you can say it in 30 seconds and people feel pretty good. At least it's the baseline that which people can then go and do what they need to do with their work. So those are a few things that I do.
I
Yeah,
also, oh, sorry, Andrew, you go ahead.
no, Jen, please.
I was gonna say I had a former CEO I worked for once in a meeting, like a cross-functional marketing comms social meeting. He was like, your assets to me are a reflection of your org chart. They are
Oh.
not actually a reflection of what the customer is expecting. So, and it stuck with me because I think what happens is the customer doesn't care who wrote the blog or who picked the story or who like managed the ad buy, right? They just want clear communication at every touch point. And so that means we need to be working so closely and cross-functionally with a fully integrated content strategy, not just a calendar, but a strategy that is mirroring the customer journey, not the org chart. And I think what that looks like in practical terms is obviously regular, cross-functional syncs. But I would say also like a journey-based content map.
Yeah.
You're aligning the stories to the moments in the journey, not just launch dates or like what you think
Right.
to be relevant, because then you're talking to yourselves. You're not talking to the customer. So if it's awareness, what is that? If it's consideration, what does that look? That's probably SEO. It's probably video content. If it's action, it's probably email, retargeting, lower funnel, but all around the same story, the same narrative in different ways and in different touch points.
Agreed.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you. The idea of a shared scorecard or dashboard, I think in particular where it ladders back to the actual business strategy goals and metrics, where everyone sort of shares an understanding of this is the core strategy of the business.
Right.
These are the outcomes, the objectives we're trying to achieve. And then here's a shared dashboard or scorecard against those. Then you have a strategy that you all ladder up to, and it's a shared strategy, it's a shared focus. Then it comes into the relationships, it's the cross-functional teams.
Right.
There's an opportunity for professional development for each other, right? Do we speak the same language? Can we understand the jargon that the different disciplines are using that may actually mean the same thing, but we haven't just thought to ask each other about it? I think it's just that take the extra step of asking the question, build that relationship, have a scorecard that matters to business strategy that everyone buys into, and then just have that guide a similar direction, even if you're coming at it from the different disciplines.
Right. And a lot of the companies worked for, community was a big one. I owned community at the Mom Project, and it's really interesting, like the amount of power of knowledge that you get through community content and some of that, and that how do you package it up so that folks in the other part of the company can get that information. It's amazing to me how it actually does not always get filtered. So, even early on, can you pull the external feedback and content that we hear about it all the time, whether reporters are telling us this or that, or well, your product is this, but I heard it over here and this, and we get all that information. Like being able to share that, I think, is also a really powerful thing that helps build bridges across the departments or functions, or how large your company is. I always felt that was a really thing that I always wanted to share all the time, because we had the most external kind of outreach besides like if there's customer service or customer experience. So
that's a really great point, Wendy, that I don't think we've touched on yet, actually, but like we are so often on the front lines. I mean, we're talking reporters, but
but then you're like Reddit, and how do you respond to like this awful comment, or Google reviews, and we are. Yeah.
Well,
I would love to more.
I guess you're right. I mean, I think it's in many ways, it's an honor and a privilege, and it's a responsibility to bring the voice of the customer back into the business, because so few of our marketing colleagues have the opportunity to do that. They have the opportunity to hear that. And so what a gift in many ways.
Right. Well, there is a book. It's called The Complaint is a Gift. It's an old book, but it's still relatively, it's a Timeless concept.
Well, I love the LinkedIn content. People say, it's not this anymore, it's this thing, or we're going back to the old thing. And I'm like, well, it's always been about the right content and the customer journey. You're just
Yes.
adding a
Right.
few X's and O's to it now. And adding a few
Channels
emojis.
changed, and suddenly people think it's a totally new thing, when really, if you zoom out, it's just about trust.
It's
It's
just
about
about trust.
authenticity.
Yeah.
It's about, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now,
And the
one of the
experience.
one of the things that we touched on a little bit earlier is working with the other functions, but when working, you know, Andrew, whether it's coming as an agency or in-house, Wendy and Jennifer, how important is it for the comms team to meet with the sales team? It seems to me that they also get a lot of frontline information, but a lot of comms people seem to want to kind of stay back from that. We're not part of sales, but everything is sales. Everything is trust. Everything is strategy. So how do you incorporate talking to the sales people, or maybe talking to the HR function for internal communications, to make sure it's not just the social signals, but it's the real, you know, sort of, Wendy, you talked about coming in first and doing the round of interviews, but doing that on an ongoing basis.
I think it's really important. I think it you know, in many ways, it comes back to that, is everyone telling the same consistent story, right? What is the quickest way to erode trust? One is just to do something illegal or unethical, but the second one is, I'm hearing something different from every person associated with this organization. I don't trust what I'm hearing from any of them. So
Mhm.
the closer you can get to a consistent story, even if it's nuanced for the different function that's using it, sales has to talk about it a little bit different than we're going to if we're talking to a local elected official on community relations, if we're talking to a reporter for a story we're trying to pitch, if we're working on digital content. There is nuance to it, but if it doesn't ladder back to the same consistent message, that clear articulation of who the organization is and what's our reason to be and why should you care about it, you're
Exactly.
losing that trust that really is what all of us are trying to build.
Right. And that's kind of where I was alluding with that message map. Like it talks about, it starts with the why, then you do the what, then you do the how, but then you do the payoff. And like, how do you prove your mission, if you will? And it's just a standard thing that, to your point, and then when government affairs is talking to, you know, committee members, like, of course they're going to tweak it, but we're all saying the similar why and the similar what our impact is and what we're trying to deliver. So absolutely. And then you got to keep on it, and and just keep communicating it, keep educating, tweaking it as you need. So
They're also the early warning system, right? Like I think Dustin was saying it, all of these different sources of intel are telling us something. Is it resonating? Do we need to tweak our message? Is the trust building or is it falling apart? You know, all of those early warning systems are based on different interaction points with an organization.
I also think there's you know, you sort of touched on this in your question, Dustin, around you know, making sure that everyone is aligned on the narrative without policing it.
Yeah, right.
One of the things that I found to be successful is, you know, you've got your sort of overarching corporate or functional narrative and story. You know, if you run storytelling sessions by function or department or team, it's not a training, it's actually a co-creation. And so then you know, often it's harder to destroy something that you've put your own fingerprints on, that you've helped build. And that can be a really effective way to help teams personalize or translate the story, but also keep it anchored in that core truth. And then it kind of helps them, you know, from there you can kind of give them the messaging tools, not scripts.
right.
And to think about ourselves as being the convener, not the owner or I always joke with some of my peers. I'm like, I'm not the comms police, you know,
No.
we're not the story police. We are helping them build their own story and their, you know, so I think there can be a lot of value in actually bringing our partners into this work, not trying to keep them out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You used the
Absolutely. We're
word,
the educators.
Yes.
Jen, I think Jen, it was you used the word authenticity earlier, right?
Yeah.
The same message used the same 10 words isn't going to feel authentic coming from a sales leader the same way it would if it's coming from a government affairs leader, the same way it would if it's coming from the HR leader. They need to have the same thematic focus. They need to the same sort of buy into the why for the message, but it has to be authentic to their function and the audience they're speaking to.
Right.
Well, and that's what we do in comms all the time. The op-ed is different from the newsletter, which is different from the social media post, which is different from the speech, but they're all tying together with the same narrative.
Right. Exactly.
Now, one of the other things we talked about on our prep call was trusting the content and not just being, what was it, Jennifer, you brought it up. I don't remember your exact phrase, but not just going for people, but also going for LLMs and really customizing to what's coming from the technology. How are you all doing that with, Andrew, with your Wendy, with your clients, and Jennifer in-house? How are you integrating that with making sure that everyone is trained up and making sure that also everyone is moving again in the same direction strategically and tactically?
We have a couple different things. We've been training many of our teams on just getting comfortable with using different, not just LLMs, but also different AI wrappers and AI tools. The other thing we've started doing, and I think everyone should be doing it, is a brand audit using different LLMs. So if you go into a ChatGPT or Claude and you say, hey, what is I don't know. What is McDonald's? What are they known for? Why might somebody avoid McDonald's? That shows you what the story is being told, and you can ask it for its sources. So I've pushed, Claude is not always very forthcoming, I have to say, but when you can push it harder, and eventually get some sourcing. And then you can start to think about, okay, how might I create higher signal content? We know that the LLMs are favoring things like, data, right? Consistent language, earned media. What's up, PR people? So a strong about page, all of your owned content. And so if you can start to then, and this is, we're not perfect at this, but we're starting to kind of move in this direction, is how do we then train teams on source hygiene? So validating and refining what LLMs are saying about our brands, and then thinking about, okay, how might we change? We're doing this right now. One of our pages, we're changing it from sort of a blocks of text to FAQs, because the question and answers, that format is working very well in some of our other pages. So it's really around how we think about owning our narrative in a new attention economy. And no one has this perfect, by the way. Like, no one knows like what this is the checklist you're supposed to follow. So what I'm trying to encourage my team to do, and what I would encourage everyone to do, is just test and learn and experiment and play and try to get more what's the word?
Just comfortable with just how it is evolving. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. I agree. Like, testing, using it. I mean, people are like, just use ChatGPT, and it kind of makes me cringe a little, just for the pureness of the writing. You're like, oh,
I
just
know.
use ChatGPT. But use it, but don't then cut and paste. And that's the other thing, like the education, like, we all know when you use it, like you can
Oh,
tell.
it's so obvious.
So
Oh my
please,
gosh.
please edit. But I think, to your point, test, do it, use it, play with it, all the things, because it is really interesting. And I love your brand. I love that brand idea. Like, I did it for a couple other things, but not the way you did it, Jen. And I think that is so smart and so interesting. And people even said, do it for yourself. Like, what is ChatGPT for your
I haven't done
personal
that yet.
brand? I haven't either, but
I roasted myself
it's
back in February, and then I roasted my wife right after. And hers was funnier about me because my wife, again, we have 5 little kids, and I'm an extrovert and she's an introvert. So at one point, I think it said, you're trying to get home to the kids and your husband's keeping you at the grocery store talking to strangers. Literally been true. So if you want to have a lot of fun, roast yourself on ChatGPT. and then post it on Facebook and see what happens.
That's my worst nightmare. I have a corollary to this actually, because I saw on LinkedIn recently in the last 2 days or a couple days ago, maybe it was even yesterday, a PR agency owner posted a screenshot from ChatGPT where he asked Chat who was the best whatever PR agency in in the US, and his answer that he got through Chat, I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I asked my Chat, and it gave me a totally different answer. So even if we are sourcing and we are doing our audits, I also suspect there is a pretty strong um, there's a strong data layer on top that is probably pulling in from your personal history with that LLM. So, no surprise, this guy's PR agency was #1. And so my suspicion and my hypothesis is that, ChatGPT was just relying on its history with that, person versus
Right.
what a regular customer might get when they search. So it's a flag, right, when we're looking through our audits.
I saw
And
a
it's interesting
really,
that oh, sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
I was just gonna say I saw a really interesting similar thing that suggests, again, to the point, this is the brand new for everybody. I don't think anybody that says they know what it is right now is
AI expert.
probably being a little disingenuous, because I saw someone had a video, it uploaded a picture and it said, create the exact same picture for me. And every time they said it, it created a different picture, just different enough. But then they showed the progression of it, almost like it was an old school, like flip chart. And it went from one person totally identifiable to a totally different person.
Wow.
Over the course of just prompting, give me the exact same picture you just gave me. Give me the exact same picture you just gave me. And for wherever in the sort of background of the tubes and the connection points and the like back end of LLMs, something suggests, and maybe it's this idea that it wants to give you the right answer. And so it's, if you're asking something the same way, it thinks maybe, again,
Not the right answer.
right?
Interesting.
It's not giving you what you're looking for. And so that caution is exactly right. Like that's why I'm still pretty optimistic that yes, AI is going to absolutely impact communication. It's going to impact everything. But that human component to it, the integration and the effective use between human and AI is where we need to get to. It's not a replacement comms does. It's just an enhancement that we need to be comfortable using.
Right.
Well,
Well, it was interesting, Jen, when you said the website. So I was going back to the marketing comms work together. So here you're saying
Bring it back,
FAQs.
Wendy. Well done.
I know, but I'm like, oh, this is so interesting.
On message.
So you do. I am. You talked about FAQs and, marketing website, like the website's got to be the hardest working asset, the company has, especially for, B2C type thing. So like they're testing this, but then what you're saying, with the LLM and AI, like testing it, like, but guess what? FAQs are working, and that's what's going, in terms of like a reputation and branding. So that's an interesting conversation, and I'm curious if marketing comms are having that, because we see it on this end, but the homepage has to do this, but FAQs are working better. So that is a very interesting like conversation that as you were talking, and as I worked in B2C where they ran the homepage, like comms, it was hard to push comms and messaging because they're like, no, because we need leads, it's got to work as hard as it can. But with AI and LLM, I think that's an interesting dynamic, that data points that may change that conversation a little bit. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting.
Even in the conversation, go ahead, Jennifer.
And just the creation of your website strategy.
It also, I think one of the ways in which I have talked to my web team about this, because I think what's easier is we're not recommending changing the homepage. It's like a sub page. But one of the things that we're looking at is, why do these AI tools favor this type of content? And start there. It's signal. So it's using structure, it's using simple, clear semantic language, like how, why, right? It's often living in high authority pages. So like support centers, help desks. And so one of the things we've started to do with our web team is building a unified content map, like literally mapping out, okay, what are the questions our audiences are asking? Who's currently answering them? Is it like
Mhm.
a blog post? Is it social? Is it, and then how that answer shows up when you ask Google or an LLM
Mhm.
actually is helping us identify where our strongest signals living. So it's sort of a yes LLM brand audit, and also what are we hearing? Voice of the customer. What are
Right.
places, and kind of mapping them together.
Yeah, fascinating.
Well, and I just did a ChatGPT while you were talking. I did a ChatGPT search for proven media
Full time, I
solutions
love
using your framing, Jennifer. And what I found really interesting is, as the face of the company, I've gotten myself published in USA Today, Newsweek, PR Daily, PR News, PR Week. The one outlet that came up was Authority Magazine,
Oh,
which isn't even in the industry, right?
It's
But
probably one of their FAQ structured stories.
yes,
they,
exactly.
right, they still use medium.com and all that stuff.
Right.
So I found that really interesting because they have continued, even though their format is very rinse, wash, repeat, they have continued to be relevant because I think they're constantly up there. No one uses, I don't think anyone uses Medium anymore per se, but they have continued to be up to date on everything the way they're doing and marketing themselves.
Yeah, but
I love
think
Authority
about
News.
it not as the outlet or the outlet name, but think of it as like they have, if they're on Medium, that is a high domain authority, right? Highly
Oh, is it
indexed.
really? I didn't know that was
It
still high
is.
domain. Okay.
Mhm.
So
I didn't know
that's
that.
Very
very
much.
reliable signal source. The other thing that Authority Magazine does well is they're very repeatable interview formats. So it's like
Right,
five
right.
things you can be a whatever leader. And so that structure is like catnip for LLMs because it's
It's the same keywords over and over
To
again.
train on.
and it's
And
question
it's
answer
question
based.
format.
It's perfect for extraction and summary. Yeah.
Mhm,
And it's also perfect for content and earned and paid and
Yeah.
mhm.
media and shelf life. Like
Oh,
continue to build that on.
That makes sense. So we're kind of coming up on time here fairly soon. What haven't we talked about?
there's so much to talk about.
I know.
So Andrew, we haven't really talked about how, we talked a lot about in-house points of view. When you come in as the agency, how do you lead without being seen as stepping on toes? How do you make sure that you are seen as part of the team, and maybe if you're leading the strategy, again, that you're not coming out as this outside figure stepping on everybody?
I think a big part of it is ensuring that either through your client contact, is it someone in comms, is it someone in PR that brings you in, whatever that entry point is, ensuring you get through them or you ask them to try to track down what is the business strategy. Again, the more you can ladder back to the business goal, the more you can ladder back to something that's going to drive growth, the better chance you will have of getting everybody on the same page of the value that you're bringing, right? It's demonstrate the value. The value is to connect to business strategy and growth. So whoever the entry point is, encouraging them to get or to have and share with you the strategy so you can build the comms focused strategy, the PR strategy that supports that, the more those other stakeholders are going to see the value of what comms is bringing, no matter how then you're talking about supporting, augmenting, doing something different than the marketing campaign that's already launched out there.
And then Jennifer and Wendy, when you're in-house, how do you ensure that an outside agency is incorporated appropriately? How do you do that from a internal communication, streamlining operations perspective?
Mhm. I mean, tactically, it's frequency. So you're having that frequent touch base, the agenda. I also bring in folks a lot. I would always kind of bring like a special guest, if you will, from whether it was marketing or product. Maybe it's because we're going to drive some sort of campaign, but it always helps the agency get a little bit more embedded in the business goals. To what Andrew was saying, like it's one thing for them to hear from me every week, but I'd rather, up to the bringing in the CEO at certain times, whether it's quarterly, just to hear them talk about what's going on in the business, what's going on in the industry, what's keeping up at night, what would be an amazing win, because that's always helpful for an agency. Like if we could get X and Y or this, I really want to be in Authority Magazine. That I think is really helpful for them, is like bringing the product lead in, or bringing in our government affairs, what's going on in that, and doing that on a frequent basis. So it's not just like a one-off, like it is a consistent conversation you have throughout the year, has been helpful when I've worked with agencies.
Also think and I think we've all been at agencies at some point. I think Wendy, you have been at agencies, maybe not.
I have not.
Never mind. I totally made my own personal LLM just hallucinated.
It's my own thing.
I can't do my best work if I'm an advisor to you, if I am treated
Exactly.
as a writer who
Exactly.
managed, right? And that's just a fast track to crappy, mediocre work. And so I would say give as much context as possible. Let them see the messy stuff. Like,
Exactly.
that's not a problem. That's a good thing. Invite them to the table before the plan is baked. So I think, they should know on a regular basis, what's your CEO worried about today?
Mhm.
What are your internal priorities, not just your media goals, your PR goals. What are your
Right.
business goals? I think
Right.
agencies do their best work. And I absolutely love my agency partners. When they're not vendors, you are treating them as allies who, I love the word embedded, Wendy, I think you just said it, like embedded allies with a seat at the table and a stake
Exactly.
outcome.
Exactly.
Not partner, and I
Exactly.
joke that my team at Weber, who's our agency of record, I joke that they're one of their folks on their team. I'm like, you're like my 1-800 phone a friend. Like whenever something happens, I'm like, Peter.
Yes. Yes.
They're
Before I
That's
tell
fine.
anyone in my company, I need to get this feedback. Exactly.
It's better
Speaking
for
of,
both
no one
sides
does
in
this
that
anymore.
relationship,
It's
for sure.
That's true. You're right. It's like aging myself.
My kids
but no,
actually
my
copy
agency
me
is
by putting a
my,
headset on instead of a
yeah.
phone now. And they go, we're like daddy, we're on the phone.
You're like, no. But the agency, they are only successful as if you bring them in. They are an extension of my team. Like they absolutely are. I tell them hands down all the time, because if I can't do my job if I don't let them in, and yeah, they have to be actually embedded as much as possible. So
Well, it's 5:24 Eastern, and I promised my wife that I would get her over for dinner at 5:30. So I think we should wrap up. This has been a lot of fun, except for the part where I sort of, shot myself in the foot with what was it? MPS, NFL, NBA?
Hey,
NPS.
any of the acronyms, pick
Any
your
of the
own.
acronyms.
Yeah,
Okay.
Love an acronym.
CIA.
Pick your favorite one.
ML.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this was fun.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, only Jennifer and I brought appropriate humorous mugs.
Oh, wait,
So
what does yours say? Oh, I love it.
Oh,
my wife bought me this one.
Amazing. So cute.
Well, folks,
Yeah,
this was a
has
lot
been
of
great.
fun. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot, so thank you.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you for hosting.
being with all of you.
Yeah. It's
Have
good.
a good- have
Learned a
good
lot.
Afternoon, evening, depending upon your time zone.
Awesome.
Well, thanks,
Thank
We're
you.
Dustin,
doing it again.
everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
All right.